Jennifer is a loving daughter.
You get all A's now.
I will, Papa.
A hard worker.
You're the nicest girl in the whole class, and you're worth 20 of those spoiled rich kids.
An A student.
Jennifer is our scholarship girl. No background at all.
But the rich kids don't like her.
That hillbilly smells, my dear.
They're doing bad things to her.
Hey, Jennifer.
They're trying to get rid of her.
I really don't think you belong here, Jennifer. And I'm personally going to see to your departure.
Jennifer has a past she doesn't want to remember.
When you was a little gal, Jenny, you used to feed him yourself.
Please, Papa, forget him.
A knowledge she doesn't want to believe.
All of the congregation, even the old folks, was amazed at your power.
It was wrong. You know it was wrong.
And a power she doesn't want to use. But they just won't leave her alone. And now they've made her mad. Jennifer. She's a holy terror.
We're not talking about actors. We mean a real monster.
I brought her back. She'll live and I'll get her another body.
I know they're going to catch me, but don't let anyone see me like that. Please, Doctor, help me.
Biologically speaking, it's of primary importance that man should want to mate. Hey, that
You don't get all your kicks from surfing, do you?
We want to be free to ride our machines without being hassled by the man. And we want to get loaded.
You think you're going to make a slave of the world? I'll see you in hell first.
The American International Podcast.
Are you ready?
Thanks for listening to the American International Podcast. I'm Jeff Markin.
I'm Cheryl Lightfoot.
And in this episode, we're attending a girls' school complete with supernatural serpentine slaughter with Jennifer from 1978.
Jennifer was directed by Brice Mack with a screenplay by Kay Cousins Johnston that came from a story by Steve Krantz. It was produced by Steve Krantz for Steve Krantz Productions and American International Pictures.
Jennifer stars Lisa Pelikan as the titular Jennifer, Bert Convy as Jeff Reed, Nina Foch as Mrs. Calley, Amy Johnston as Sandra Tremayne, John Gavin as Senator Tremayne, Jeff Corey as Luke Baylor.
It also stars Louise Hoven as Jane Delano, Ray Underwood as Dayton Powell, Wesley Eure as Pitt Lassiter, Florida Friebus as Miss Tooker, Georganne Piere as DeeDee Martin, Lillian Randolph as Martha, Domingo Ambrose as Jose, and Tony DeFelicis as Bud.
The film opens and we see our main character Jennifer. She's getting ready for school, wearing her prep school uniform and primping her hair in a mirror. She goes downstairs.
Her father is sitting sullenly at the table. He calls her Jenny, which she hates, and Crab said he doesn't want his dinner to be late tonight, so she better not dilly-dally after school, but come home right away. She sighs and reminds him to call her Jennifer, not Jenny.
He asks if she's ready for her test today. Like always, she replies. Get all A's now, he says, as she goes out into the pet store they run in front of their living space. And she repeats that conversation to her animal friends. A bird, a kitten, rabbits, and she adds, don't be late for supper.
Then she dashes off to catch the bus as her cloying theme song plays. Do a little bit of that, Jeff?
Jennifer.
It's basically that.
The credits play out as Jennifer makes her way to the prep school she attends. And as she approaches the school, a group of girls are gathered outside the building. Among them are Sandra Tremayne, the daughter of a senator, and Jane Delano, a decidedly less pretty girl, but she's easily manipulated to do Sandra's bidding.
They're also with their friends Tammy and Brenda. Sandra complains that Jane only had time to make one copy of the test that she stole. Jane was afraid that the teacher would catch her. Sandra insinuates that Jane wants to bed the teacher, but that she has no chance of succeeding. One of the girls from the swim team, who we saw running around the campus earlier, bumps into Sandra. This is DeeDee, and she asks Sandra, how is the Queen of the May today? Sandra says she has nothing to say to DeeDee. Brenda wonders if DeeDee saw the test copy that they had. Sandra says no, but says Jennifer, who's just arrived, did see it. She blocks Jennifer's path. Jennifer looks at the other girls and feigns ignorance and innocence. What test, she says. I didn't see anything. Sandra says that she'd better not have.
And Sandra stops Jennifer to torment her about her accent, referring to her as hayseed. Jennifer goes inside and Sandra returns to her friends. They all laugh about Jennifer's going to the school via scholarship, and where is she from anyway? West Virginia? More laughter ensues.
Tammy asks where her copy of the test is, and Sandra tells her to sit behind Jennifer. She has all the answers.
The girls go inside, and Sandra wishes Miss Tooker a good morning. Miss Tooker returns the sentiment and seems distant while doing so. Then Miss Tooker goes to Mrs. Calley's office. She's the school's headmistress. Miss Tooker says that she's been having trouble with one of the students, Sandra Tremayne. But Mrs. Calley reminds her that Sandra's father is a senator. And while she's obviously been spoiled, Mrs. Calley reminds Miss Tooker that handling students like Sandra is part of her job. And if she's not up to the task, then and Miss Tooker says she will do her best.
And that's the end of that for now. Now we're in the girls' restroom. Sandra lights up a cigarette as one of the other girls brushes her straight bobbed hair. Sandra says she told her boyfriend Dayton that Jane would pay for it. We don't know what that is yet. And Jane objects. She paid last time. Brenda asks for some lewds, and Sandra says Jane can get anything.
Yeah, Jane seems to be pretty well off, and that's why they let her hang out with them.
Jane objects to being the source of all their purchases. And then Sandra sidles up next to Brenda and, well, just shorten the conversation, threatens to expose her extracurricular shoplifting excursions, much to Brenda's horror.
Then Sandra turns back to Jane, threatening to not let her hang out with them anymore, unless she agrees to pay for those Quaaludes.
And everything else, apparently.
Sandra says she knows Jane likes them, and wants to hang out with them, and that she really likes Dayton. The bell rings, so the girls run out to Mr. Reed's class for that big test. Mr. Reed passes out the test, and almost immediately notices Sandra copying answers from a sheet of paper she slips on her sleeve. "What's this?" asks Mr. Reed. Sandra says that Jennifer gave her the answers. You see, she's been absent so much recently. "That's not true," says Jennifer, but Sandra continues, saying Jennifer gave a copy of the test to everybody. Mr. Reed asks where Jennifer got the test, and Sandra says, "Ask Jane. She gave the test to Jane," then whispers, "Jane, tell him." Mr. Reed reaches into Sandra's bag and finds that copy of the test. "The sad thing about this," declares Mr. Reed, "is everyone loses." So now Sandra, Jane, and Jennifer are all in Mrs. Calley's office. Mr. Reed is standing by, his arms crossed in front of him, as Mrs. Calley handles the situation in her own way.
Mrs. Calley directs all her attention at what Jennifer did, because she was telling tales. Jennifer tries to defend herself, and then Sandra yells at her. Mrs. Calley says Jennifer doesn't understand their ways here at Greenview and tells her to go to her dining hall job. And then she asks Jane where her mother is. Jane's mother is in Paris, so Mrs. Calley will have to call her father's lawyer. Mrs. Calley dismisses Jane. That leaves Mrs. Calley, Sandra, and Mr. Reed. Mrs. Calley soft pedals Sandra's cheating as a little mischief, but Mr. Reed insists that Mrs. Calley call Senator Tremayne, her father, over Sandra's objections. Mrs. Calley supposes she has no other choice but to do that.
So in the next scene, Mrs. Calley is on the phone with the senator. She tells him that his daughter was caught cheating. He doesn't see how this could be so, but she tells him that under the circumstances, it would be best if he came down in person to discuss the matter. He says that's not possible, but Mrs. Calley is quite insistent.
Now we're in Jennifer's father's pet store at night. Jennifer's with the animals, holding a kitten like a baby. Her father warns her to not get too attached to it, but she brings it to their home anyways. Inside, her father grouses that she didn't cook the meat till well done. He won't have no blood touch his lips. Jennifer doesn't want to talk about food, though. She wants to talk about her problem with Sandra, but her father's fixated on the raw meat.
I also want to mention that she's very busy during this conversation, ironing a dish towel.
And her dad's kind of a man baby who can't feed himself, apparently. Jennifer says that Sandra is the prettiest girl at school. Really, Jennifer? But her father goes off on a Bible tangent.
He quotes some scripture and tells her that she should return to doing the culty religious stuff she used to do, but Jennifer has lost all enthusiasm for that.
Her father pulls out a laminated article about her child snake handling experience at their weird West Virginia church. Now Jennifer is asleep, but her father is in the pet shop with what appears to be a rattlesnake. Do they sell those as pets? He's asking it to speak to his Jenny.
The next day, the senator arrives at the school to meet with Mrs. Calley. The matter of cheating is cleared up as soon as Senator Tremayne writes a check for $10,000 for the school's new tennis courts. Mrs. Calley thanks him for making the trip, and he asks why this Jennifer is such a trouble to her. Mrs. Calley explains that Jennifer is their scholarship winner. She scored so high on the entrance test that the board felt they had no choice but to admit her. Perhaps your board could use better judgment in the future, offers the senator. He goes outside where Sandra is waiting for him. As they walk back to the senator's car, he warns Sandra that this is her 4th school in 5 years, and if she gets kicked out again, she's on her own. "I was framed," protests Sandra. "It was Jennifer. She's jealous. She knows Mr. Reed is in love with me." "Oh, yes," says the senator. "Like Mr. Patterson from Seaside School was in love with you. That incident cost him $20,000. "You can afford it," says Sandra. "But you can't," says the senator. He threatens to send her to live with her mother if she keeps acting up. Sandra panics. "No, don't do that. She doesn't want me. She threw me out the last time."
He says he can't come down there every time she blows her nose. He asks if Sandra's taking her pills. Sandra says that her mother takes the pills in this family. Again, she begs not to be sent home to her, but her senator father tells her to be a good girl and graduate, and he won't. Then he gets into his limo and speeds away.
Sandra immediately goes to track down Jennifer. She finds her and tells Jennifer that her days are numbered. "I haven't done anything to you," says Jennifer. "You finked on me." Jennifer tells Sandra she'd like for them to be friends, but that offer doesn't interest Sandra at all. She tells Jennifer that she just doesn't fit in here. "I have a scholarship," says Jennifer. "I belong here." "I don't think so," says Sandra, and she's going to see that Jennifer will not be enjoying a moment of her time here.
And I guess that campaign of terror has already started as Jennifer opens her locker to find broken eggs soaking into her books and other stuff as some girls laugh in the background. Then we see her having to fish her uniform jacket out of the swimming pool, again with girls laughing at her. And next we see Jennifer serving food in the dining hall. Apparently everyone else gets to eat except the scholarship student. Martha, an older woman who works in the cafeteria, is serving coffee at the tables. Then she returns to the food line where Jennifer is. Over at Sandra's table, she tells the others that now's the time, and then gets in line as Jennifer is serving soup. As Jennifer ladles soup into her bowl, Sandra moves her hand so that hot soup washes over it.
Sandra starts to cry and whine that Jennifer did that to her on purpose. Mr. Reed comes over. He thinks Sandra is overreacting, but Jane says she saw it and it looked like it was on purpose to her. Mrs. Calley runs up to assess the situation for herself, but Mr. Reed says that he doesn't believe they want to get Jennifer in trouble over this. If you say so, Jeff, says Sandra. Good, says Mr. Reed, grabbing Mrs. Calley by the arm and dragging her away.
As Jane and Sandra share a sly smile. Mrs. Calley cautions Jeff that he's very lucky they gave him a teaching position here while he completes his graduate degree and tells him to not abuse the privilege. Don't undermine our structure.
You mean the rich over the right, says Mr. Reed. The rich are always right, says Mrs. Calley.
So patronizing. Martha comforts Jennifer. She knows Sandra lied, but warns Jennifer to watch out for her type, the one that carries razors in their buns. That reminds me of Coffee, where she put a razor in her wig. She's nothing like Sandra, though.
Martha says Sandra's been in more schools than Martha has teeth.
She likens her to a spider on her leg. If she can't ignore it, the spider or Sandra, then Jennifer will just have to blast her.
Now we're in the prep school dormitory, where most of the girls seem to be living, and there also seems to be just one towel to use between them.
No, I saw two.
A girl walks down the hall drying her hair, and another girl snatches it as she walks by. Then yet another girl grabs it, saying, "Gimme that," and she heads to the shower with it. In another room, Sandra, Jane, and Brenda are gossiping about John Travolta and Warren Beatty,
who Sandra allegedly slept with, or tried to.
Brenda is using a curling iron, and Sandra grabs it, saying, "Gimme that." Then she holds it in such a way as to show that she's impervious to the extreme heat.
I mean, I use a curling iron, and if I get it even an inch from my head, it starts to scorch my skin. So the fact that she put a live curling iron on her palm, well, she's made of sterner stuff than me. Jane marvels at Sandra turning down John Travolta. Sandra claims that it wasn't all that. And now we see them leaving the dormitory dressed as matronly 1920s movie stars. Think Margaret Dumont. Jane's still bragging about her Hollywood guys when her own boyfriend Dayton arrives in his red sports car.
Sandra and Jane hop into Dayton's car, and he asks if Jane's coming along, what are they going to do with her at the end of the night, and Jane offers to take a taxi. So Dayton accedes. They drive off, and another car pulls up to pick up Brenda and Tammy.
Their boyfriends are Pitt and some other guy. Only one of them has a name, as far as we know.
Then they all drive to a parking garage and race to the top.
We spent a little time with the attendants. One of them says to the other, someone's going to get killed up there. And the other attendant says, what we're all thinking, so what?
So they're going to what seems to be a not so popular disco, at least as far as parking is concerned, because they're the only two cars in the entire garage. But the club itself is crowded.
And what an odd club this is.
They're dressed pretty strangely compared to everyone else in the club.
Everyone else looks straight out of Studio 54. And, well, the first time I watched this, I thought that Sandra looked like the Madam puppet, only without the impressive jawline.
Dayton's the one with the impressive jawline.
He looks like a blonde frat bro from any 80s movie. Sandra's crabby because, well, Jennifer exists. Tammy, Brenda, and their goofball boyfriends go to dance. Dayton sits at the table with Sandra and complains about lard-ass Jane. So Sandra pulls him onto the dance floor too, leaving Jane, who's only there to pay for their shit, to sit alone at the table, smiling at Sandra as she gyrates awkwardly on the floor. Sandra seems to be making a show of having a good time just to rub it in Jane's face.
Jane wanders over to where Pitt is standing watching the others, and knowing that she's only good for one thing, and that's getting money, he asks her to give him $100. He says Brenda's birthday is coming up. Jane wants to know what's in it for her. His company, Pitt offers. Besides, Jane's loaded. She can afford it. She grumbles, so he lowers his asking price to $75, then $65. Jane tells him that some guys find her sexy and she doesn't have to pay for their company.
Sexy? Asks Pitt. Then he pulls her close for a sample of her sexiness. He macks on her for a second, then closes the deal on the $100 with a sheepish Jane.
He doesn't collect it this time, though. Brenda's on the dance floor, spinning and flailing her arms. The guy dancing with her is forced to keep his distance, so he's not injured.
She looks like one of those sprinklers whirling around.
Sandra takes a table with Dayton. She asks him to help her come up with something to do to Jennifer. So far, he hasn't been very helpful in that regard.
He reluctantly agrees. Now we're in the pet shop. Jennifer asks her kitten if she'll ever find a boyfriend. The kitten doesn't respond. She tells her cat that he loves her because she brings him food. Her dad, for whom she does the same thing, though he doesn't love her, creeps up on her and asks who wouldn't love her. Jennifer explains about her school bullies, and Dad says that the Lord thinks she's pretty cool and that should be enough for anyone. Her father tells her that if her mother were alive, she'd tell Jennifer of their proud family heritage.
Mama didn't die, says Jennifer. She ran away. Your mother died when you were only 3, says her father. She never got to see you or your gifts. She never saw you when you wielded the power. He wants her to go to the box. It was evil. It was wrong, says Jennifer. Her father starts quoting scripture, and he pulls on a couple of snakes, holding them up over his head. Jennifer runs out of the shop, flashing back to her youthful misadventures as a snake handler at their small town's church revival.
She runs, she almost bumps into a man in an alley, and then screams. She returns home, where her dad tells her that he put those snakes away.
Coincidentally, today Mr. Reed's class is Snake Day.
He also has snakes on the brain.
Mr. Reed tells the girls how the cobra is even more deadly than the rattlesnake, and how the mystics in India can charm them, like a bullfighter and a bull, offers Jane, and Mr. Reed admits that the technique may be similar. He goes on to tell about the superstitions of religious cults who use these snakes as part of their ceremony.
This guy's a science teacher, but he's teaching the class about snakes and the religions who love them. Jennifer, who has no intention of not coming across as a weirdo, takes this opportunity to explain her bizarre religious beliefs. The snakes give them the power if they are pure of heart.
Mr. Reed says that children have been killed in these ceremonies, but the power was gone, explains Jennifer, and God meant to take them. Mr. Reed thanks Jennifer for her interesting take on the subject.
Yeah, she's not ranting, but she comes off every bit as weird as her father here. Even Mr. Reed looks freaked out. However, after class, Nancy and DeeDee from the swim team, who are nice, pretty, and have good hair, but inexplicably are not the most popular girls in school, ask Jennifer to join the swim team.
Jennifer says she'd like that, but admits that she's not a very good diver. That's okay, we can teach you, DeeDee says enthusiastically. Then Nancy tells her that all that snake talk was creepy, and she may want to knock that kind of talk off.
Jennifer looks a little stunned as they leave her. And now we're at practice, where Jennifer's getting trained by Nancy and DeeDee. She's okay, but she could be better. They tell her the water won't bite. Jennifer says that she wishes she just didn't need to dive. They say that she better learn because they need her jazzy freestyle. Don't know what that means.
Just then, Sandra comes in to heckle Jennifer, but DeeDee comes to Jennifer's defense, challenging Sandra to a race.
Nancy taunts Sandra too, saying, "Yeah, didn't you say that Mark Spitz gave you swimming lessons?"
Sandra thinks on this for a moment, then accepts the challenge. Teams are chosen, and Jennifer tries to sit this one out. Sandra suggests it would be a good opportunity for Jennifer to practice her diving. Then she pushes Jennifer into the pool, and this starts a free-for-all as all the girls push each other into the pool.
As everyone's frolicking in the pool, Sandra slinks over to Jennifer and pushes her under the water, holding her down. Jennifer's stuck down there with no air.
Jane, who is wearing a sweatsuit so she doesn't have to swim, sees Sandra sitting at the edge of the pool holding Jennifer's head underwater. So she goes to intervene. She grabs Sandra's arm and Sandra releases Jennifer while staring daggers at Jane as Jennifer comes up gasping, "You tried to drown me." "I wouldn't do that, Jennifer," says Sandra. "You're my friend, aren't ya?"
In the locker room, Sandra lights into Jane for interfering in her murder plans. Sandra tells Jane that she's her friend or she's not. Jane says that she is Sandra's friend, but they shouldn't go that far. Sandra pushes Jane hard, saying they'll go as far as she wants to go when she wants to go.
And if Jane doesn't like it, she can always start a new life as a skag, alone in the cold, pissy sea.
Jane looks stunned, and now we see Jennifer, and she looks kind of stunned too. Or does she look determined? She's staring into the rippling pool, intent on something. In the locker room, Sandra has a vision of a snake coiled up amongst her belongings, and then just as suddenly as it appears, it vanishes.
Now back at the pet shop, Jennifer is cuddling with her favorite kitten, as her father is telling her he doesn't like the idea of her swimming. She tells him she enjoys it and it's good exercise, but he says the folks back home would be all up in arms at the thought of it.
It's sinful. Her father notices some scratches on her back and asks her about them. She says that she only fell. He says he's praying for her.
Her father tells her once again not to get too attached to the cat. He's the best of the litter. "You're not going to sell him, are you, Papa?" she asks. "I told you that's why they're here," he says, taking the kitten from her and putting it back into its cage.
And now Jennifer arrives late to Miss Tooker's class, where Brenda is reading poetry by Blake. Miss Tooker asks the class if anyone can explain that line. Sandra starts saying something about people being two-faced. When asked, Jane has no opinion. And then Jennifer is called on. Jennifer says that the line to her means that behind a pretty face can lurk cruelty and jealousy and evil. Sandra's smirk changes to irritation and then to some darker emotion.
Now Jennifer's back working in the dining hall with Martha and telling Martha about the incident at the pool. Jennifer says that there was one girl, Jane, who tried to help her, but Martha says she doesn't trust that fat one either. Martha asks Jennifer if she needs a ride home, and Jennifer says that no, she's staying late. Then she goes to the payphone to call her father and let him know that she'll be late. He asks about his dinner, and she tells him there's casserole in the refrigerator. "We're out of eggs," he says. She says she just bought them, but he tells her that he fed them to the snakes. Then he starts reminiscing about the old times with the snakes, and Jennifer tells him they should forget about those times. They're bad. She hangs up and goes down to the locker room. She's alone. She undresses and showers.
She's really digging that shower. Oddly, though, we don't see any nudity here. When she turns off the water, she hears a door slam. She thought she was alone there. She calls out and nobody answers. She heads back to her locker where, predictably, her clothes are missing. Then we hear Sandra's voice taunting her from somewhere nearby.
Cat calls of, "Hey, Jennifer," echo throughout the locker room, along with giggling and pounding on locker doors.
Yes, Sandra's not alone. She brought her friends and her boyfriend.
Jennifer sees the door to the pool swing shut, so she goes out that way, wearing only a towel. "My purse! Please give me back my purse. I can't get home without it," says Jennifer.
We hear Dayton's voice tell Jennifer that she looks sexy in that towel. Jennifer looks around and finds all her things hanging from pipes overhanging the pool. There's a ladder nearby, and she has no choice but to climb it so that she can retrieve her things. She can't get home without them.
When she gets to the top of the ladder, a flash goes off, blinding her. Jennifer loses her balance and her towel and falls naked into the pool as Dayton snaps pictures.
And now Jennifer returns home. Her father's sleeping on the couch with an evangelical preacher blaring on the radio. Dad wakes up and complains that the casserole got burnt, and Jennifer apologizes. She lies and says she's fine when he asks if she's okay.
She goes up to her room, still sopping wet, while the soundtrack keeps whispering, "Jennifer." The kitten is in her room when she gets there, so Jennifer picks it up, holds it close, and bursts into tears.
Aw, kid can't catch a break. At school the next day, Jane's on a payphone trying to reach her wayward mother as Brenda's tacking up a photo of the new Jennifer on a bulletin board. Jennifer walks past and sees the photo and rips it off the wall, shocked.
Then the bell rings, and it's time for Mr. Reed's class. Today's subject, reproduction.
Ooh, so topical.
During Mr. Reed's lecture, Sandra raises her hand and asks what his thoughts are about certain kinks. Mr. Reed asks Sandra if she's asking for herself. "No," says Sandra. She was thinking more along the lines of people who enjoy posing in the nude.
Wow, what a super weird kink that is.
Mr. Reed says that would depend upon the circumstances. For example, if she were tricked or given drugs. The bell rings again, so Mr. Reed doesn't have to elaborate on that anymore.
Sandra hangs back. She wants some alone time with Mr. Reed, but he dismisses her. He needs to speak to Jennifer alone. He hands her that nude picture of her and asks how that happened. We were wondering what he's doing holding on to it. She begs him not to tell Mrs. Calley, and he agrees. She tells him that she has to solve her own problems. Mr. Reed says that the person who did this needs help. That's a psychopathic thing they did.
Sandra and Jane are listening on the other side of the door. "What did he say?" asks Sandra. Mr. Reed tells Jennifer to call him Jeff and that she needs a friend right now and he'd like to be that friend.
Oh boy.
Jennifer says nothing. She just picks up her books and walks out of the classroom, only to be accosted by Sandra, who pins Jennifer against the lockers. Sandra warns her to stay away from Jeff. She's the one he loves. "Mr. Reed was right," says Jennifer. "You do need help." Sandra says he has no complaints when they're in bed together. "That's not true," Jane pipes up. "He's married." Sandra and Jennifer both look at Jane like she's sprouted another head.
Even Jennifer's not that naive.
"You're exaggerating," says Jane, and Sandra slaps Jane and tells her she's out. Jane is a skag just like Jennifer, and Sandra hopes she likes it in the cold, pissy sea.
Why is the sea cold and pissy?
Sandra storms off, and Jane chases after her.
At the pet store, Dad grouses that Jennifer could help him with the parakeet cages. Jennifer stares at the cat cage. Her kitten is gone. Dad said he sold it to some girl at her school who came there looking for Jennifer. "Which girl?" asked Jennifer numbly. Her father has no idea. He says he needed the money, so he had to sell it.
"What money?" asked Jennifer. "I work here every night and I never see any money." Her father removes his belt. That sounds weird.
It looked weird too. I didn't know what he was going to do. He starts taking his pants off. That's what it looks like.
Her father whips off his belt, holds it over his head, and goes on a tangent on the powers she used to have. But Jennifer reminds him of Jimmy Lee, the preacher's son who was killed at the age of 8 when she couldn't keep a rattlesnake from biting him. Her father continues that she had the power, she lost it, but she can reclaim it. Jennifer reminds him that they were run out of town after what happened. He says that her mother had the power, but not like Jennifer did. But now if Jennifer can reclaim it, they can all go back home.
Jennifer says that her father needs to accept that this is their home. And once again, he badgers her to believe. So she runs away. Back at the parking garage/disco, Sandra's back in her madam getup. Jane tries to catch up to the others as they run to the elevator. Before Jane catches up, Sandra tells Dayton that she wants him to do the thing that they talked about, and he agrees.
"Why not?" he says. "Could be kicks." Sandra and the others get on the elevator, and Dayton goes over to Jane. They'll have to get the next elevator. He tells Jane that Sandra told him that she doesn't want to go along with some of Sandra's plans, and that Sandra's asked him to talk to her. Dayton takes a hold of the ribbon around Jane's neck and says that he wants her to do whatever Sandra tells her to do. "Okay," says Jane. When they hop on the next elevator, Dayton stops it. Jane asks why, and Dayton says that she wants to be alone with him, doesn't she? Then he attacks her.
Back on the top of the parking garage, the gang are all waiting for Dayton to join them. He does, leaving Jane sobbing in the elevator in a torn dress. Pitt asks about Jane, so Sandra distracts everyone by demanding that Pitt and Dayton have a drag race.
So while they race around the garage, Jane makes her way to a payphone to call her mother. Jane is in tears trying to explain what happened, but Jane's mother has no time for this nonsense and hangs up on her.
She's apparently in a different time zone. It's 9 a.m. where she is. The race ends, and the girls get back in the cars with the guys. And I guess they leave, because now we're with Jennifer, once again leaving school after her evening shift in the dining hall. She didn't shower this time, I guess.
Why does she have an evening shift at the dining hall?
I know, all the other kids are at the disco.
Anyway, yeah, she's working late again for some reason, and she appears to be the only person in the school right now. She goes to her locker, opens the door, and finds the kitten strung up inside. Jennifer screams.
This part was really hard because this is a very realistic-looking cat hanging there, and it looks exactly like my cat. At home, Jennifer's in her nightgown. She looks in on her father, who's sleeping. Looking dazed, she wanders into the pet store. She goes over to the snake cage, picks up the rattlers or whatever they are, and then she asks the snake gods forgiveness. They do not bite her. She begs the snake to lend her its strength, draping the snake over her body.
The next day, the senator is taking a phone call from the school. I didn't even know Sandra had a cat, he says. Mrs. Calley tells him that Sandra is very distraught over the death of this kitten, and that it was this Jennifer girl again. He tells Mrs. Calley to handle it, or he'll be taking Sandra out of that school.
Sandra shakes her head. She doesn't want that. So Mrs. Calley promises that she'll take care of it and get the police involved when necessary. Now we're with Brenda and Tammy, who catch up with Sandra in the hallway. Sandra says that Mrs. Calley talked about calling the cops, but Sandra's going to take care of this on her own. They both vow to help her.
Now we're in the science lab, where a more confident Jennifer is working on something, and Mr. Reed notices the difference in her demeanor. We all change sometimes, says Jennifer. Just don't change too much, Jennifer, he replies. Don't call me that, says Jennifer. My name is Jenny Lou Baylor.
Now back with Sandra and her gang, they're discussing Dayton and Jane. She may have accused Dayton, but she heard Jane was high at the time, so it wasn't rape. Tammy says, give her a break. Losing your virginity is rough. As she recalls, Brenda says that Tammy was only 10 at the time. What are these girls getting up to? Anyway, Sandra is in no mood for fighting. She feels really good right now. Tammy's impressed, considering the cat situation. Oh yeah, says Sandra. The cat. And then tells them to come on with her.
Jennifer goes to Jane's room, where Jane is sitting on the bed. Hi, says Jennifer, locking the door behind her. Did she make you kill the cat? No, says Jane. I wouldn't. She did it herself. How could she do it, wonders Jennifer. You promised me she wasn't planning anything that bad. Jane replies that nobody trusts her anymore. Nobody believes her about Dayton. Jennifer brings out a drawstring bag. The sound of a snake's rattle emits from it. Is it poisonous? asks Jane. No, it's venomous, you twit.
But Jennifer just nods. Jennifer asks Jane if she's really with her now. This time Jane nods. Dayton is the one she wants. Jennifer tells Jane to put her hand in the bag.
Jane laughs nervously. Why? What are we doing? Sealing our bargain, says Jennifer. Jane places her hand in the bag, and Jennifer slightly smiles. Now with Mr. Reed and Mrs. Calley, and they're having tea. Mr. Reed can't understand why she would side with a rich airhead like Sandra when Jennifer is so obviously not a cat killer. Mrs. Calley says that it hardly matters who killed the cat, but Mr. Reed thinks this does matter. Mrs. Calley tells him that he served a purpose here, but if he doesn't feel he's getting anything out of it, fire me, he asks. She holds her stare. I'd be grateful, he says. Mr. Reed, says Mrs. Calley, your wish has been granted.
He gets up and tells her that this school is going the way of the dinosaur. When the reptiles take over the world, he says to her, she can care for their young. Now we're with Jane and Jennifer in the science lab. Jennifer has her drawstring bag with the snake in it. She tells Jane that she's safe. Jane only has to do her part in this plan. As Mr. Reed comes in with some boxes, Jane hides behind a desk.
Mr. Reed advises Jennifer to get out of the school while the getting's good.
Mr. Reed tells Jennifer that with her brains, she could get a scholarship anywhere, and he'll help her.
But Jennifer tells him that she has some things to do here. As they're speaking, the snake escapes from its bag. Jane sees this from her hiding place. And Jennifer notices too, and she mentally coaxes the snake back into the bag. Then Jennifer picks up the bag and walks out with Mr. Reed.
At the pet shop, Sandra lies to Jennifer's father that the gang wants to surprise her with a fun early morning breakfast kidnapping. So could he please leave the back door open for them? Her dad asks Sandra if she's one of the girls giving Jennifer such a hard time at school. Sandra says no. Her name's DeeDee Martin. She's on the swim team.
Oh, you're her friends, Jennifer's father says. Of course, says Sandra. Why else would I want to surprise her? That evening, Sandra, Brenda, Tammy, and Jane are all sitting around waiting to pull their prank on Jennifer.
Jane's sitting on her own bed looking out the window. The other three are all in the same bed looking rather cozy. Tammy says that maybe Dayton is coming, and Sandra shrieks at Jane to close the window. They're going to show Jennifer what they do to skags, and this is probably for Jane's benefit as well. Later that night, 5 cars arrive and park behind the pet store. Inside are Sandra, Tammy, Brenda, even Jane, and their guy friends.
They all don ski masks, sneak into Jennifer's house, grab her, gag her, tie her up, then throw her into the trunk of Sandra's car. Sandra and Jane are driving around with Jennifer in the trunk of their car as the soundtrack plays Bach's Toccata and Fugue in D minor, or the theme from Rollerball.
Jane tells Sandra that she doesn't want to do this. Sandra says that this is her game. Jane needs to play it or she'll be the next one in the trunk. Jane confirms that Sandra put Dayton up to raping her.
Sandra smiles. Just to teach you a lesson, she says. In the trunk, the voice of Jennifer's father echoes through Jennifer's head.
There's a weird red light effect that's coming from behind her. It's kind of effective, but I don't know where that light's coming from.
The cars all make their way back to their favorite hangout, the parking garage. Then they park their cars in a circle and pull Jennifer from the trunk. "You were here," says Sandra, "because you killed my cat. I told them, and they all believe me. Show her what we do to cat killers."
The others start yowling like cats. They set her, bound, in the middle of the lot.
Some of the guys jump into their cars and start driving around as Jennifer stands calmly by.
It's a game of chicken, and she's not flinching. Jennifer's eyes grow wide as she starts manifesting snakes everywhere. In her mind, she's lobbing snakes at them all. You get a snake. You get a snake. But that's just in her mind because she's still tied up. I should probably mention what it looks like, too. There's some weird camera smear effect going on here where it's really hard to tell what's real, what's imagined.
But what we see is that one by one, the kids are attacked by snakes as Jennifer stares and strikes poses. When a very large snake bites off Dayton's head.
I thought it just picked him up by the head. I didn't know it ate his head. But then again, I can't tell because everything is so smeared over.
Then Dayton's body is thrown over the edge of the garage.
Jane smiles as Sandra screams. Sandra dashes to her car to get the hell out of there. But she's not safe. Jennifer wills a big-ass snake into her back seat. It rises up and mauls her, and she loses control of the car. As the parking garage attendants watch, she flips her car, and naturally, it explodes.
The garage attendants watch in shock and awe.
And probably glee.
At school the next day, Jennifer is in Mrs. Calley's office waiting for her to return. Mrs. Calley comes in and says that though the police are saying Jennifer has nothing to do with what happened, she knows Jennifer must have been involved somehow. In what way? Asks Jennifer. Mrs. Calley can't answer that just yet. She only knows that 6 girls are in the hospital with what she says is a respiratory virus, and Dayton is dead, and no one knows why.
Fell off a parking garage.
And the worst is that Sandra was killed in that horrible fashion.
Aww.
And no one can explain what happened or why Jennifer was there.
Jennifer says that the police suspect that it was drugs. Mrs. Calley vows to throw Jennifer out. Jennifer sweetly but insincerely says that she's sorry that the police upset her. Can she get her anything? Mrs. Calley says that she will prove Jennifer was responsible. She owes it to Senator Tremayne and all the parents.
Mrs. Calley asks Jennifer, why was she with them? They all loathed her. Tammy told you everything, says Jennifer. Tammy told me nothing, spits Mrs. Calley. She tells Jennifer that she's going to be keeping an eye on her and Jane, but she's free to go for now.
In the hall, Jane is there, and Jennifer tells her that there's nothing to worry about anymore. Back in Mrs. Calley's office, she puts her ubiquitous pill bottle away in her desk. A large viper emerges from the drawer and strikes.
Outside, Jennifer and Jane share a smile as the screams of Mrs. Calley echo throughout the courtyard.
And then the credits roll over the spiritual song that we heard during Jennifer's flashback as a child, and that's the end.
You're listening to the American International Podcast, and we're discussing Jennifer from 1978.
On December 8th, 1977, The Hollywood Reporter said that principal photography on Jennifer had begun the week of November 21st, and that the production would continue for another 4 weeks. The film was being shot in Los Angeles, California, with a $1 million budget.
In an article in Box Office Magazine, Krantz said he spent a year and $2 million producing Jennifer.
According to Box Office Magazine, Jennifer director Brice Mack and photographer Irv Goodenough developed a unique lens for the, quote, terrifying snake effects in the film's finale.
Porter Jordan wrote and performed the movie's theme song, Jennifer.
In March of 1978, The Hollywood Reporter announced that American International Pictures had acquired domestic distribution rights and planned a release for later that spring.
Jennifer opened theatrically on April 21st, 1978, and premiered in New York City on May 13th. It opened in Los Angeles on September 13th.
Marketers in Dayton, Ohio placed classified ads in the local newspapers reading, Jennifer has a secret, giving a local phone number and the instructions to call the number and pass it on. Someone at the Dayton Daily News made the call and reported that it was answered by the recording of a female voice, sultry but disturbing, slightly deranged. The voice said, among other things, I walk in terror, filled with fright, a trail of fear that fills the night. And the voice went on like that for another 10 or 15 seconds, according to the paper. A reporter spoke with Jack Oberleitner, owner of the Shikari's theater chain, who said Dayton would be the location of the world premiere of Jennifer. Oberleitner said Dayton was chosen because, quote, Dayton reflects the movie-going public of the rest of the country. He went on to say that critics in a major film city like New York might kill the movie before theatergoers in other cities had a chance to make up their own minds about the film. That same ad with a different phone number appeared in the Cincinnati Enquirer at the end of May.
Box Office Magazine's lone suggestion for theater owners was for them to play up the fact that Jennifer star Lisa Pelikan played the young version of Vanessa Redgrave's character in Julia, an Oscar-winning film from the previous year.
In ads for Jennifer in the Cincinnati Post, Hemseth Sound Centers, a local business, offered 20% off the price of a Craig power amp, handing out tickets to the first 500 cars at participating drive-in theaters. The ad for the promotion matched the ad for Jennifer, saying in bold letters, "You can have the power."
Taglines for Jennifer include, "A lovely tale of terror."
Jennifer makes Carrie look like an angel.
"She's got the power, and you haven't got a prayer."
"She won't even let you finish your scream."
Taunted and tormented beyond endurance, she strikes back with venomous power.
Box Office Magazine's review of Jennifer said, veteran Hollywood stars Nina Foch, Jeff Corey, and John Gavin add interest to the supporting roles. Producer Krantz has a long record of hits that include Cooley High and Which Way Is Up, and his production know-how does much to add to the chills and thrills throughout his latest project.
Nearly every newspaper critic who covered Jennifer called it an obvious ripoff of Carrie. Candace Russell in the Miami Herald wrote, "A pretty and unassuming teenage girl with telekinetic powers is forced to use them on the schoolmates who hate her. If that idea sounds familiar, it's the one Brian De Palma used in his last two movies, Carrie and the Fury." Now American International Pictures has taken the theme with nary a twist and made the highly entertaining Jennifer. She added, director Brice Mack doesn't have the big budget for exploding bodies or buckets of blood, so he opts for frights that are cheaper, though sometimes more devilish, such as giant serpents.
William Whitaker in the Abilene, Kansas Reporter News wrote, though Jennifer manages some genuinely creepy moments, it comes up with some ludicrous ones as well. The producers of Carrie have no need to fear. Director Brice Mack is just not a Brian De Palma. Especially laughable is a section in which one of the cast members attempts to escape an abandoned parking garage with a giant snake looking more like the La Choi Chow Mein dragon coiled up in the back seat.
Janet Maslin in the New York Times wrote, if Jennifer doesn't copy the precise ending of Carrie, the reasons appear to be financial rather than aesthetic ones. Instead of marshalling an entire special effects department to help Jennifer trash her hometown, the film merely shows her summoning up the vengeance of the snakes. After that, giant snakes appear. They bite all the right people.
Chris Gladden in the Roanoke Times called Jennifer a hand-me-down horror, saying, quote, Brice shows a certain talent that is more than copying another director, though he doesn't bring off the big scares. Yes, Jennifer is tasteless and silly, but it's reminiscent of the old American international motorcycle gang films that gave the likes of Peter Fonda, Dennis Hopper, Bruce Dern, Jack Nicholson, and Peter Bogdanovich a chance to work.
Emery Lichtenwaldler in the Mattoon, Illinois Journal-Gazette noted the myriad of similarities between Carrie and Jennifer, but says Jennifer's ending was the biggest letdown since the 398 girdle. I've been scared more by a walk through the reptile house of the Brookfield Zoo. It screams fake. The technical features are mighty amateurish.
Linda Gross in the LA Times said Jennifer was, quote, an atmospheric nightmare that never sees the light of day. In the same vein as Carrie, a murky movie about a shy, lonely schoolgirl who uses her supernatural powers to avenge juvenile sadism. The screenplay by Kay Cousins Johnson from a story by Steve Krantz is too sketchy. The adults are all portrayed as puppets with no power, and the relationships among the students are too artificially drawn. Brice Mack's direction is remote and surreal, with a definite drug haze tinge. Violence is effectively stylized.
Bob Ross of the St. Petersburg Times opened his review poetically. What a wonderful star is Miss Pelikan. She vanquishes foes like a fella can. She talks with a drawl and makes creepos crawl, and her snake handling skills still developing. He also called Jennifer, the character, a rich kid's Carrie with reptiles, and said, surely producer-writer Steve Krantz and director Brice Mack are playing this Jennifer routine for laughs. But without a total commitment to horror or to satire, the movie flounders weakly between the two. Lame, tame, and not too scary.
Desmond Ryan of the Night News Service called Jennifer a carry-on movie and blasted the studio, saying, because this movie comes from the low-minded, low-budgeted American International, the snakes were very cheap-looking. The boa seemed to have a touch of phlebitis, the rattler seemed a trifle asthmatic, and there looked to be rubber filling things out at the bottom of the snake heap.
Noel Taylor in the Ottawa Citizen wrote, the publicity people invite their own invidious comparison with Carrie, makes Carrie look like an angel, they trumpet, and kid themselves that anyone who saw Brian De Palma's telekinetic massacre would be impressed with that. Actually, Jennifer makes Carrie look devilishly classy. Jennifer is trash.
John Barker in the Hamilton Spectator said Jennifer ranked at the top of his all-time losers list, saying Steve Krantz has tried to climb aboard Carrie's broomstick with his story. Brice Mack's direction minimizes the already minimal potential in Krantz's story. Jennifer has abandoned the fang, oops, I meant faith, of her father, but it's clearly just a matter of time until she puts the bite on the bad guys. Since that includes almost the whole school population, the movie is building pretty obviously to a giant snake-orama climax, which eventually arrives in due course.
Jim Wright in the Hackensack, New Jersey Record said director Brice Mack handles the material without the slightest inkling of how to create suspense. The few rare scenes that might scare somebody are telegraphed so far in advance they are either bland or inane, and the snakes are as frightening as Kukla of Kukla, Fran, and Ollie.
Edward Jones in the Fredericksburg, Virginia Freelance Star wrote, "If American International Pictures actually had a studio, the perfect slogan to hang over its main gate would be, 'If an idea is good, it's worth stealing.'" 2 weeks after Here Come the Tigers, AI's copycat version of the Bad News Bears, the company now offers us its faint reflection of that hair-raising horror gem, Carrie. Were it not for the direct comparison with the splendid Carrie, Jennifer might have held up better. The next time AI goes into other people's story files, it would be wise to inspect the loot more carefully.
But Joe Beltacchi of the Philadelphia Daily News said, despite its status as a ripoff of Carrie, Jennifer is essentially an old-fashioned horror movie. It's Carrie all over again, but without the blood and the Brian De Palma cinematic wizardry. It's what Carrie would have been like had De Palma gone the old-fashioned route, taking a more quiet, slithery approach. Neophyte filmmaker Mack doesn't resort to anything loud or garish, or to quick storytelling. With Irv Goodenoug's excellent color photography, and despite the film's obvious budget restricts, he's come up with a handsome movie. So, Cheryl, we're talking about Jennifer, and it's obvious the critics picked up on the similarities to Carrie.
I don't know what they're talking about. They're totally different movies to me. No, I'm kidding. Of course, it's almost a note-for-note remake. The only thing they changed is the ending, and they just made it more ridiculous.
John Travolta exists in that universe, so I wonder if they saw Carrie.
Yeah, it's possible. They're old enough, I'm sure. This movie has a lot of problems. It's way too long. I think it's an hour and a half, but it feels like it goes on forever. And most of that is these girls torturing Jennifer for what appears to be no reason whatsoever. The character of Sandra is probably the worst psychopath that I've seen in a movie in the past year at least. She's just evil.
Yeah, there's not really any motivation for Sandra to be as bad a person as she is, except that Jennifer is a redhead and has that accent.
They don't say anything about her being a redhead. Of all the things they tease her for, that's not one of them. And Jennifer is a bit weird. I mean, I can see how she would get picked on, but I can't see how she has the nice girls, DeeDee and Nancy, the swim team girls. They're so pretty and likable. Maybe they don't want to hear about the snake thing, but they really like Jennifer. Why aren't there more people on Jennifer's side? Or she's utterly alone here.
Well, Mr. Reed's on her side.
Oh, well, in a very problematic way, it looks like.
Yeah, it's always the creepy teacher.
Yeah, he didn't help her in any way. He just made her more uncomfortable.
Yeah, call me Jeff.
Yeah. Well, I do call you Jeff, but you're not my teacher. There's just so much piling on in this movie. The tension never slacks. Like, you never see this girl get a break and think, oh, okay, maybe it's going to be okay. And then we get a climax that doesn't really match up to that. What happened to these girls doesn't balance out with the way they treated her.
I don't know, could you imagine the climax without the car exploding? Because there would have been no climax to the climax at all.
Well, I think Sandra should have ended up hung in a locker somehow. That would have been fair.
With the snake acting as a noose.
Exactly. See, we've already written a better movie.
About the snakes, it is unusual for a pet store to carry rattlesnakes, right?
I think so. That would be really dangerous.
Well, I don't know if these snakes have rattles, but they sound like they do.
The sound effects person gave them rattles. There's just so much weirdness in this movie.
For example, what subject does Mr. Reed teach?
Every science known to man, including the social sciences. One day it's snakes, one day it's reproduction. These apparently happened within days of each other. I know I commented at one point that this movie must have been written by a man. And that's not the case. I found out later. I think it was the scene, we didn't even mention it, but Jane comes in accusing Sandra of stealing her really dirty magazines. Not Playboy or Playgirl, but Hustler. I may have grown up a little sheltered, but do teenage girls really fight over Hustler? Like rich ones? Can't they get better stuff? Like we? And the way they were dressed at the disco. Why were they dressed like that? They're all dressed like flappers, but matronly ones.
At least it was sequiny.
It just didn't scream disco to me. It screamed weird costume idea for a masquerade.
And Sandra puts on the exact same outfit both times she goes to the disco.
Jane changes. She's got more than one outfit.
Jane's rich.
They're all rich. You know, all these kids are spoiled and neglected. And so we kind of get an idea of why they are the way they are, but they have no nuance except for Jane. Sandra is just straight up evil, but apparently Mrs. Calley loves her. I don't know why she's not kowtowing to all the other rich girls. Why is Sandra her pet? She's a terrible person and apparently a bad student. Definitely a discipline problem.
Right, if Jane's supposed to be the rich one, you think that Jane would be the one that she'd be doting on.
Well, apparently Jane's mom is not available to come down there and write checks. So that must be it.
Ah, yes, that is true.
Those tennis courts aren't going to build themselves. I just feel like the people in this movie aren't very realistic.
As written, but I think that the performances are good with what they had to work with.
That's true.
I don't want to single out Louise Hoven, who played Jane, but I guess I'm going to. She didn't really seem to be fitting in with the other girls. I mean, she was kind of just there because she had money, but she also looked like she was about 10 years older than the rest of them.
Well, she may have been, was the way that they cast in those days. And even today, no high schoolers play high schoolers.
No, but the other girls were believable as high schoolers, and Jane almost looked like their mom.
I think they made Jane a bit too pathetic, too. And the girl has no self-respect. Made me feel bad for her. And as bad as everything that happened to Jennifer was, the worst thing happened to Jane. Her friend set her up to be raped.
I wrote a note, as awful as Sandra is, Jane is worse, but I don't remember what I was referring to.
Well, Jane may have been worse because she picked on Jennifer too, even though she did come through in the clutch a few times. It took her getting attacked herself.
Well, Jane could take an awful lot because she was abused the whole time that she's hanging out with these people, but she just took it because she was allowed to hang out with these people.
Yeah, and we can see that she's neglected by her own family, so she has nobody.
And Bert Convy's Mr. Reed. Boy, is that an interesting character. Why is he keeping a picture of his student, a naked picture of his student?
He should have just destroyed it and then mentioned it to her.
Last time we saw Bert Convy, he had a frying pan dent in his head, so it was good to see him up and walking again.
That was, 20 years before this one? So do you think he was sleeping with Sandra? His character, I mean?
No, I don't think so.
I think she was delusional, but I think he did want Jennifer.
He did seem awfully interested in Jennifer.
Like there was a potential grooming situation that could have happened there.
But he's married.
Couldn't be that then. Oh, that was funny.
We had Nina Foch as Mrs. Calley, and she was a leading lady back in the 40s. So this is...
Oh, yeah, her IMDb picture is stunning.
Yeah, she's in the Ten Commandments and Spartacus. And by then, that was past her leading lady days. So she's got a resume.
It's too bad she plays a bootlicking toady in this movie.
I was looking through everybody's IMDb pages, and Nina Foch and Lisa Pelikan actually share a credit many, many years later in a movie called It's My Party, which I haven't seen. It's a guy who's dying, and he's basically throwing a party for himself to let everyone know his situation. And she's in the cast. Lisa Pelikan is an uncredited guest at the party.
It really seemed like Lisa Pelikan was going places. She not only was in Julia, where she really blew up from that. At the time this movie came out, she was in a television adaptation of True Grit, which also got good reviews. And she seems like a really good actress, so it's kind of amazing that she's doing uncredited bit roles a few years later. Because as bad as this movie is, I think she's still good.
It was fun to see Jeff Corey here in his only AIP appearance, because he was a well-respected actor and acting teacher too. On a related note, Jeff Corey was the teacher of the acting class where Roger Corman met Jack Nicholson. And we had Wesley Eure as Pitt, who was Will in Land of the Lost.
He still looks the same.
And he would have a larger part in Chomps, which we will be doing one day. Florida Friebus, who played Miss Tooker, was occurring on the original Bob Newhart show. And I remember her as Dobie Gillis's mother in The Many Loves of Dobie Gillis.
Oh, wow.
So it's kind of a fun cast and seeing a lot of people who are either just starting their career in terms of the younger cast and the older, whose best days are probably behind them, as evidenced by the fact that they're appearing in Jennifer.
I wonder that they even should have made this movie. I don't think it did that well, from what I could tell.
Well, I think even from the advertising, you can tell that this is trying to be like Carrie. And maybe people were saying that, been there, done that.
Yeah.
You're not going to be able to do it better than that.
No, and they didn't. So
No, they certainly didn't.
If you surmise that without seeing the movie, then you're correct. It was a real slog getting through it.
And we brushed on this, but the climax culminates in confusing chaos.
Very apt. It's confusing because you really can't see what's going on. There are snakes slithering all over the place, but we don't know if they're real or not.
I guess they're not, because everybody winds up in the hospital, according to Mrs. Calley, of a respiratory virus. Is that different than a respiratory virus?
Oh, absolutely. It costs a lot more. But then there's no evidence of snake bites on anybody. Not even Dayton, who may or may not have had his head bit off.
Yeah, the only one we know for sure is that Sandra apparently blew up in her car.
She blew up real good. We could have written that off as an accident. She was speeding out of the parking garage. What happened could have had nothing to do with Jennifer. It's like Jennifer's power was creating images in people's minds. We saw that in the locker room after Sandra tried to drown her. So I think that her power is just making people believe stuff that isn't there. And that's not really that exciting. I don't feel like you need to have the power of the serpent to do that.
No, I don't think serpents can do that.
I don't think snakes can give you the power to create illusions.
I don't think snakes can create illusions themselves.
I think a special effects team has to get involved.
Maybe this film should have had one.
Or a competent one.
So Cheryl, you don't seem entirely enthused about this one. So I'm curious how you're going to rate Jennifer using our AIP scale, where A is awesome, I is intermediate, and P is pathetic.
I think there are a lot of pathetic elements to this movie, but I think it still holds together well enough to hit in the middle there, maybe on the low side, but I don't think this is a complete waste of time because there are some pretty funny scenes. And there is a little bit of good acting in there. Like I said, I like Lisa Pelikan as Jennifer. Maybe watch it on video so you can fast forward through the theme song, which is a really horrible earworm to get stuck in your head.
It doesn't go away either.
No.
Jennifer.
Yeah, I'll never forget that. And of course, it is totally a ripoff of Carrie. I don't think I would tell anyone to never watch this. It's kind of a lesson in how not to make a movie. But if you want to have a bad movie watching party, this might be the ticket for that. And it might be fun. So I'm going to give it an eye. What do you think?
Well, one of the reviews said that in a world where Carrie didn't exist, this might have actually been a good movie. And it might be a better movie. I still don't know if it would be a good movie. And a lot of that just happens to be because of the special effects at the end. The snakes at the end just aren't real, and they're obviously not real, and it definitely detracts from everything you've seen before. I think if it had better special effects at the end, it'd be a lot more powerful. If it was better filmed in such a way that you could actually tell what was happening, even if what was happening wasn't really happening, we can't even see what's not happening. It's not the focus is off, but they've got like a Vaseline effect over the lens. And it plays out like a montage where it's jumping back and forth between Jennifer striking her poses and close-up of her eyes and then people being harassed by snakes. And it's just not satisfying an ending because we don't really get to see what's going on. We get a sense of what's going on or what may or may not be going on. But as an audience, you kind of want to see the carnage after watching these people torment everybody around them for the entire movie. And that's why I think the explosion at the end needed to be there, as unrealistic as that was. Sandra needed to blow up. But I, too, am going to give this one an eye. It's not a great movie. It's not bad. And it's a lot different than I was expecting. I thought it'd be more a straight Carrie ripoff. I didn't know there was going to be snakes. So that was a surprise. Not necessarily a pleasant one. I don't do snakes personally. But I thought the performances were good in what was not a very good script. The dialogue was terrible. And the character, I don't know why they always have to have such a creepy teacher in all these movies. Why can't he be a caring individual without overstepping boundaries? They don't do that in movies.
Well, maybe we should talk about real life.
Anyway, this one is an intermediate eye for me as well.
Jennifer didn't win anyone over with its lack of originality, but the American International Podcast website is totally authentic. At AIPpod.com, you'll find our entire library of over 150 episodes of the American International Podcast, as well as a contact form. You can message us directly. No need to get giant serpents to do your bidding. You can tell us which movie you're most looking forward to us reviewing, make a comment on something we've said, or, if you like, you can help us track down some AIP movies missing from our library. We have a list on the site. While you're there, you can indulge in your love of all things AIP, as we are building a database of the entire American International Pictures catalog as we go through it. We have lobby cards, posters, trailers, and other advertising materials on display, and you can see where to find these films so that you can enjoy them yourself. While you're on our site, consider going to our store, as a purchase of one of our fun items helps keep the podcast rolling every week. And once again, you can find all of that at AIPpod.com.
Well, now it's time to shake off the snakes because another episode of American International Podcast has come to an end. I'm Jeff Morgan.
I'm Cheryl Lightfoot.
And we'll meet you at the drive-in. Follow the American International Podcast on Instagram and Letterboxd at AIP_pod and on Facebook at facebook.com/American International Podcast.
The American International Podcast is produced and edited by Jeff Markin.
A man whose mind is distorted by hatred.
And Cheryl Lightfoot.
A girl hungry for too many things.
The American International Podcast is part of the Pop Culture Entertainment Network.